Today's episode is for anybody in the mortgage industry. It's with a special guest. So we make JC get out of the hot seat, and we're bringing in his number one fan, someone who is a 20-year mortgage industry veteran. She is a who's who in the industry. She started as a loan originator, but today she finds herself in a senior sales leadership role. She is a fellow CMB. She is a best-selling author and a keynote presenter. You're going to want to tune in to get to know today's special guest, Laura Kay. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children 18 plus, you are tuned in to the Loan Officer Podcast with me, Dustin Owen, and a very special guest, all the way from Iowa. She attended the Arizona State University. She entered the mortgage industry, not necessarily because she wanted to, but out of necessity. She is one of JC's number one fans. She is a sales leader, having earned her stripes working for credit unions, MI companies, and now she is the SVP of Sales at Watermark. She is my friend, my fellow CMB, and MBA advocate, Laura Kay Sheely. Laura Kay, welcome to TLOP.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to be here. I've listened for years, and as you said, I'm a number one fan of JC.
Yes, well, thank you for listening. Here's a funny story about Laura Kay and JC that I don't think either one of you want me to tell, but you met JC for the first time. We were in San Diego. It was probably 2021. It was MBA annual.
Yep.
We were Arch MI, your previous employer.
Yes.
Which I can talk about. Maybe you can't, but I can.
You can.
Arch MI was throwing an event. Arch MI's, we're huge fans of Arch, and they're big supporters of the show. We're big supporters of Arch, but they're having this rooftop reception.
Yep.
And it's probably 9 o'clock at night, and no lie, JC and I flew in that day.
Yep.
There's a good chance that he probably had some adult soda pops on the airport in Orlando in the morning.
I remember this vividly.
So then imagine what state of mind he would be in at 9 p.m. Pacific, which is midnight Eastern. We've been traveling for like all day.
Right.
And I think the first thing out of his mouth to you had nothing to do with your name or how you were dressed or who you worked for. He said, "What are you doing wearing that?" And he was talking about your lanyard.
Yep.
And you looked at me and you're like, "Who the F is he and how did he get in here?" And I was like, all right, I'm going to intervene and we're going to like reintroduce y'all at a later date. Well, today is that later date.
Well, actually, there was a date in between that you may not know about.
No.
You did an event in Cedar Rapids.
Okay.
Which I described to you before you started as you're about to teach to Mayberry, because it's the Mayberry of mortgage lending. And JC was in the other room. And while you were speaking, I went back and caught up with him, asked him 101 questions about the podcast and how he was really the secret sauce behind the scenes.
He is. Oh, and y'all made amends.
And we, reconnected again, and my love for him.
It's just grown since then. And
grown.
by the way, shout out to that crew in Cedar Rapids. I mean, that's like Nick Mundorf.
Yes.
That's like Nick Territory and
Tim Lamb.
Yes, and Tim.
Yeah.
Or how about Tyler?
Yes.
Right? Tyler crushes it. Still one of my favorite mortgage originators to like follow.
Yeah.
And even learn from. So I was at the hidden gem of the United States of America, y'all. If you haven't been there, I will say Des Moines probably my preference. No knock on Cedar Rapids. I've also been to Newton.
I mean, Des Moines does have the Cheesecake Factory, which is our only location.
No, Des Moines has this really awesome bar. It's like a dive bar.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like you're going into Grandpa and Grandpa's basement.
Miller High Life Bar?
Yes, but it's not called that. It has like a different name, like Garage or Grunge. Anyhow, it has like 100 beers on draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went there one time. We were in Newton for a funeral. We flew in and out of Des Moines.
Sure.
And we got to Des Moines early to catch our flight home, and we stopped by that bar for like 2 hours. And it makes me actually want to go back to Des Moines.
Yeah, it is a step back in time. It's a fun spot.
It is a fun spot. Do you live in Des Moines? Where do you live?
No, I live in the Amana Colonies, which is just outside of Iowa City. It's a German tourist town. But yeah.
And Iowa City is where the Hawkeyes are, right?
That is.
All right, go Hawks.
That's right.
Go Hawks. Although you're an ASU girl, no?
I am an ASU girl. So I went back to school late in my career and graduated from ASU with my undergrad and my master's degree in organizational leadership. And so Forks Up, it was a great program. And so I ultimately
So
chose
where'd you
ASU.
get started then?
So in terms of school?
Yes.
So I started straight out of high school like everybody. You go to college. I went to the University of Northern Iowa and spent my first semester there. Thought I was going to be in criminology and go into the FBI. I was highly motivated by Clarice in Silence of the Lambs.
Okay. Were you there with Kurt Warner? I mean, he's much older than you.
He would be older than me.
Yeah,
yes.
he's much older.
He
Not
was
just
not
older,
like
much
hanging
older.
out in the dorms Hagman Hall with me or anything.
Yep.
So came home that first year, freshman year, and really was not feeling the college vibe, but knew, that was what I probably needed to do the best. And then my what became my husband was home also during Christmas break, and we found out then in February that we were going to be having our first child rather unexpectedly. So you can figure out how that Christmas went. And so all of a sudden...
You just told your mother that, the Virgin Mary has come twice.
That's right. Yes, she was shocked. She didn't speak for 3 days. True story. But by the time she finally did come up for air, she said to me, it's time to get a life, get insurance, and get a job. You won't be living here. And so real quickly, I figured out that I needed to get some, professional level job. And so I went down and I became a teller. And the first couple weeks realizing that the people who drive the best cars in the parking lot were either mortgage bankers or investment officers was my first sign that I needed to change my path. And my mom was in the mortgage business though. In fact, 3 of what are now my 4 parents have been in the mortgage business. So the mortgage business was the place I was never going to go. But, realizing that a lot of these skills were probably bred into me and I'd grown up at real estate events, sitting in my mom's office on Saturdays, taking loan applications with stuffed animals and all of that. And so fast forward and I'm standing behind this teller line watching the mortgage bankers come in and out and the investment bankers, but they have all of these licenses and tests that they have to take in investments. So that wasn't really exciting.
Well, yeah, because this would have been pre the 20-hour NMLS exam and everything else,
they had all kind of series stuff that they had to do and that seemed complicated. So maybe mortgage was for me. So I ended up talking to a friend of mine, mother's at the time, and he said, you need to go to get 6 months of experience somewhere else and then I can hire you. And so I went to Conseco Finance, which was a dial by phone, loan refinance shop.
Oh, you were smiling and dialing.
I
you
was
showed up
smiling and dialing. We were refinancing Menards cards, at 18 and 25%. And for those of you who don't know, Menards is the Lowe's of the Midwest. And so I was doing that for 6 months and a day. And I learned everything that you need to know, in kindergarten, in that job.
Wow.
The good, the bad, the very ugly.
In just 6 months?
In 6 months.
And then you got out?
And then I called that friend back up and said, I'm ready. And so he opened a countrywide branch and I came over and worked for him as an internal loan officer first and then eventually as an external and just kind of worked my way through the ranks there.
How long did you originate?
Probably 3 to 4 years between originating. Before I went to full-time management, I would say it was a total of about 10.
Do you remember your PR for most units funded in a year? Because you're a Midwestern girl, so we're not going to talk volume because it's not fair.
Yes.
It's not fair when you start talking about areas like Missouri, Iowa, Kansas, even lots of Ohio, parts of Ohio and Kentucky. We talk units, but do you remember what your best unit year was?
Yeah, I remember one particular month. I closed 26 units in a month. I was at a credit union at the time, and that was the most production they'd ever seen from one particular originator. And so that was a really exciting moment. But yeah, you're right. In Iowa, we talk units because our average loan size, depending on where you're at, could be $75,000.
Yeah. So as an originator, you earned your chops.
Yes.
It's probably where you made your first good bit of money.
Yeah.
It's when you learned what good money looks like and feels like. Also, how much damage it can do if not done, not used appropriately.
Right.
And then you eventually went into, was it sales leadership or?
Yes.
Okay.
So sales leadership started to help mortgage departments, essentially starting in sales and then moving to operations, servicing, underwriting. Eventually got into also loss MIT and really kind of seeing the whole mortgage cycle from origination to property ownership.
Was that by choice? Or did the market do it? Because I'm assuming you probably got into the industry around when I did, like early 2000s.
Yep.
So then you had to live and survive 2008, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
Was it 8, 9, and 10 that got you into Lost Mid, or had you already ventured into what I would call the more like holistic approach to mortgage sales, not just origination side of things?
So the interesting path for me on Lost Mint was during 2008 to 2011, my husband and I ran a side company that was cleaning out foreclosure properties. And so we understood what was happening in that process of taking a house back, putting it back on the market. Maybe it needed some paint, some, fixes. And so when I eventually was with an organization that needed help with their lost mint department, it was rooted in that experience because I understood that these properties were really an asset for the financial institution. I always like to say foreclosure makes everybody money, maybe except the borrower, right? So that part of the business was really interesting to me. And I would say that's a theme throughout my career, is that when there's a part of the business that I feel like is maybe harder for others to understand, or something that, on the surface seems a little complicated, that I really dive in and I try to figure out how that works and what are the processes and procedures that make it really successful. And so that was one of the things with Lost Mint that piqued my interest.
So we're going to jump into this in a minute because you are a fellow CMB. You used to teach School of Mortgage Banking 2, which for those that don't know, School of Mortgage Banking 1, if you're an originator and you're any good, you could probably teach that. You don't need to necessarily go as a student, but School of Mortgage Banking 2, it's like what I needed when I was going for my CMB, because I needed to learn secondary and I needed to learn servicing. And you somehow are a loan officer who was invited by the Mortgage Bankers Association to go teach School of Mortgage Banking 2. So I'm going to want to introduce the audience to that side of you.
Yeah.
As well as like what you do now in terms of like your career. And obviously we want to talk about the book. Because you've published your first book. You have your second book that's going to be released later this year. Your first book has already been tagged by Amazon as a bestseller. Mm-hmm. And I know it's something that you're proud of. So I want to make sure that we get there. But I'm going to try to bridge a gap right now on loan origination to how you survived the meltdown, and then how you rebuilt. And then somewhere along the way, where did you learn everything you know about what I call how the sausage is made?
Yeah.
But before we get into that, one quick question about your origination career. What did you do that allowed you to become a top producer that others that were around you just weren't doing?
I would say I focused on continually educating myself. I grew up, like I said, my mom was in the mortgage business, which means that I was in the back seat of cars with Todd Duncan tapes playing.
Okay.
Or, there was constantly High Trust something. Sue Woodward was on, some video that she was watching, right? So for years during that 90s era, my mom was constantly educating herself about how to be a better mortgage originator. She led a team of mortgage originators. And so that really ingrained in me the idea that you can't just be a producer. You've got to be a learning producer all the time. And so that part of it really excited me. And I didn't get my energy so much from how many units were on the board as much as I would get energy from going to something like a mastermind summit or walking away from a great speaker who had really motivated me to change something about my business.
Okay. I mean, you obviously out-hustled. You outworked. Mm-hmm. You probably were better than most at something, right? Whether it was your presentation skills, your sales skills, your ability to connect.
Yes.
Right? I mean, here's what I found. Like, as a top producer, sometimes it's a matter of how does that conversation sound with me versus how does it sound when you say it?
Yes.
And then it's why we spend so much time over at T-Lop's Originator Coaching, like talking to our students and our members about their storytelling skills.
Yes.
Because it's less sometimes of like what you're doing. It's more of how are you doing it?
Yeah.
And are you studying linguistics?
Yes.
And are you studying personality profiling? And do you understand emotional intelligence? And then how do you convey that message in a manner that someone is going to like you, trust you, and they want to use you?
Yeah.
All right. So you obviously mastered that. And I love what you said. You were a student, an active learner, and you had a good role model, right? Yeah. I mean, whether you knew it was happening or not, you had a great role model who showed the importance of investing in your professional development. But somewhere along the way, you go from LO to someone who is helping run sales organizations or entire production organizations, and you're a bit of a SME when it comes to the secondary market.
Yeah.
Where did that kind of transaction or that development operate? Was that pre the financial crisis, during the financial crisis, or after the financial crisis?
So that was after the financial crisis. So one of the kind of stops on my career path was to do a little bit of correspondent and wholesale sales work. After I was a loan officer, I worked for a couple different companies doing that. And so that started kind of the interest level of where do these loans go? We originate them, but we say we sell them to the secondary. What does that really mean? And I was always a loan officer who really dug into understanding what makes price, what makes money. My mentor, Larry Potter, who's the one who hired me as the first loan officer, was that way. And he really understood the finances behind a loan. And so as I evolved into different roles, that interest grew. And so fast forward, and they asked me to start now leading teams or leading mortgage production groups. And I start to understand the connection between products that we choose, investors that we choose to sell our loans to, and how we need originators that fit those products and can ultimately sell those products in the best way to make the most money. So a little bit of fact check. I am not a CMB.
You're not?
No.
Why'd I think you were a CMB? I've said this twice now.
I've been doing this so long that people assume I am. And
oh my gosh, can we give you an honorary pen? I'm gonna pull a pen out of my backpack and I'm gonna give you an honorary pen.
It's actually an ongoing conversation with MBA that at what point do I just automatically get named one? And apparently there's some test out procedure, but I haven't followed through.
Bob Nemi, I'm talking to you right now, Bob. Actually, this camera. Bob, I'm putting it out there for vote. Honorary CMB, Laura K. Sheely. Let's vote on it next big CMB meeting.
There we go.
Which will probably be Las Vegas in October. But
hey.
Anyhow, all right.
Well, either way.
I stand corrected.
So I have been teaching secondary and been involved in that landscape long enough. I mean, predates the CMB. So I was asked to do teaching for both. I mostly do one. I sometimes do school mortgage banking too. But that evolved from me being very collaborative in those leadership roles, from trying to learn from other organizations. What are you doing with secondary? How are you making money? What investors are you choosing? How do the delivery routes change when the market changes? And so when I started to really invest time in understanding that, my expertise grew. And then others would call and ask advice. And so what happened ultimately was I started to get asked to do small groups and then bigger groups and then eventually teach for the MBA. And I've also taught classes for Acuma and some for CUNA. And so my whole strategy is to make secondary relatable. So as a loan officer years ago, they would hand you the printed rate sheet each morning and you would do your, finger line up, right, of your rate and then what the actual premium was. And I had this worksheet to do the math, right, to make sure that I was making exactly what I was supposed to make when I quoted it to the borrower. But in secondary, that gets a bit more complicated in terms of where that rate lock gets placed in the market, how many loans are we going to place that particular day, what's the value change from day to day, all of those pieces. And so I'm often in conversations with what I'll call highly technical experts around secondary that have a difficulty translating that to the street level or loan officers or branch managers or so on. Why do we have to make this much? Why do we have to have these investors? All those questions get asked at the street level because you're getting competition down the street. You're seeing this other bank or credit union or independent has a product that you don't have. You don't understand why you can't have it. And that's all a strategy that gets discussed and decided on in secondary. And so oftentimes I describe myself as, I like the show The Big Bang Theory.
Okay.
And it's a group of really smart guys, and then there's the penny. And I'm the penny in the room often that's trying to relate these really highly strategic decisions that get made that are really finance decisions down to how loans actually get originated. And so that means you've got to align your technology, you've got to align your process and your procedures, all of that to be in a position where you're making money, but also to be in a position where you're competitive.
But you learned this just out of desire.
Totally out of desire and a willingness to keep showing up at the table where people, like I said, were highly educated and experts in this particular field that maybe didn't think I should be there. But I just kept poking my head in and asking the questions. And what I found was the conversation would evolve to their understanding as well of how they needed to make it work to originate more loans. Because we can all get really jazzed up about our secondary strategy, but if you have no loans walking in the front door, there is no secondary strategy.
Correct. Yes. So shout out to Nicole Munnerlin. Nicole, you don't know, Laura Kay, you don't know this, but you're now her spirit animal.
Okay.
So Nicole's a friend of mine. She's one of my branch managers, actually. She's up in the Greenville, Greenwood, South Carolina market.
Yeah.
And Nicole, who is a badass businesswoman, great loan originator, and she's always peppering me with like, I want to learn secondary. I want to learn secondary. Teach me more. I want to learn more. And as much as I can, I will.
Yeah.
And where we struggle though is like, hey, Nicole, but at the same time, I need you to go out and, land that new builder.
Yeah.
Schedule that appointment with that real estate brokerage. Let's generate some leads. Let's get some recruits on the board.
Yeah.
But I do say to her, and I think you would agree, although many in our space who are on the sales side, like you don't need to know that much in order to generate leads and close loans, you're right. However, if you ever want to lead people, they're going to want to be led by someone who is fluent in all aspects of the industry and is super knowledgeable.
Yeah.
When you have conversations with borrowers or with referral sources, how do you sound? I said this earlier in the episode. How do you sound versus that person down the street? Well, if you take an hour or two a month to become a student and to learn some of this, I'm not saying you'll end up with a career in secondary, and I'm not saying that all that knowledge will like correlate to one new loan closed.
Yeah.
What I will say is you're better because of it. You sound different, and people that are around you will recognize it, at which point, if you're looking for leadership roles in this industry, that is your way to get a level or two higher up the rung for those leadership roles if you take the time to learn how the sausage is made. So you obviously had that desire. You learned how the sausage is made, but then it just opened up so many career opportunities to you.
Yes.
Which, I mean, you've run production at credit unions. You've run production at a correspondent lender, right? So that's when you had some of the top national IMBs in the country were delivering loans to you and to your team. You've worked in the MI space, and now you're at Watermark.
Yeah.
What are y'all doing over at Watermark?
So Watermark TPO, we just recently launched our wholesale and correspondent division. Watermark is an existing retail organization based in Irvine, California. And so a group of us came together and said, what would it look like if we did wholesale and correspondent better? All the different ways we could do it better, whether it be the relationship, the delivery, the technology. And so we are just at the ground level of launching this, and we intend to have a lot of relationships in the independent banks and credit union spaces with that mindset of we need to understand exactly where you're at in your business before we can match a secondary strategy to it. And that's aligned with what I've done my whole career. I couldn't pitch to the executives that we needed a new investor until I could prove to them that I could make more money with that investor as a loan officer. And so in that mindset, we walk into our TPO relationships, really learning where they're at, what their needs are. In some cases, they may need full service support from a wholesale perspective. In other cases, they might need just a delegated correspondent with a great price and a great relationship. So we're exploring all of those things, but with, like I said, the idea in mind that we put the client first and we try to understand how we can meet them in their space.
So is your ideal avatar that credit union or the independent mortgage bank that wants to deliver loans to you all, either as a non-del or a delegated relationship?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're going as far as the independent broker can also send loans directly to you on that wholesale relationship.
Absolutely.
Out of curiosity, and we don't have time to like dive into this, but you and I walked to lunch. We walked back to lunch before we hit record today, and we talked a little bit about AI. Can you hint, like, how is Watermark going to be solving for AI, or even a more high level, if you don't want to speak specifically to the company, high level, where do you see AI impacting our industry over the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, I think what's really important to understand about AI is I personally believe we're going to be in a hybrid space for a while.
And what's a while to you?
So I think I look back to the 2008 conversion that I consider happened in the business. We were going really gung-ho with alternative products up until 2008. We were making a lot of money. People were at that point pretty comfortable with what their originating product type. And then that whole thing came to a standstill. For about 10 years after, I was still in a lot of executive board level meetings about the idea that people were scared of subprime.
Okay.
Even though all of those products were coming back, we were calling them non-QM, we were calling them non-agency, they were back on the horizon. We had not fully integrated them really back into our business. I would argue we're still not fully integrated now in 2025. So what's that scale look
17 years later.
Right. So take AI now into the mix. I think things are going to move pretty quick. I think job types are going to change, but you're still going to be in a hybrid environment because while your big independent originators are going to have the ability to move quickly into technology, you still have the financial institutions that will lag behind. And so AI is being used across all of our marketplaces today in content creation and figuring out how to make automated underwriting faster. How do we review documents faster? But there's still a person there, and we feel comfortable with a person signing off on that loan file at the end of the day. And so I think it's going to take us a little while to get to the place where we don't think we need the person anymore. But the key to that is you have to be ahead of it in your mindset. You may not have AI running your business today, but you have to continually ask yourself, where could AI be running my business today?
Yep. No, it is one of those things because none of us really know, right? But you have some people that are, in some pretty exclusive groups or get to sit in certain executive board rooms, and there's super smart people in there. You talk about you being the penny of like the Big Bang in your own organization, and it's like, when someone asks me that similar question, I'm like, look, I don't know. Here's what I do know: it freaks me the F out and it excites me equally at the same time. Right. I know what we do at TLOP. We're going all in on AI like yesterday.
Yeah.
Because we have to. Mm-hmm. That said, when I look at the industry, I see our industry as we'll probably have less people getting in, and we won't be backfilling those that are getting out. And those that stay in are going to be the best at what they do. They probably already have or already are the best at what they do.
Yeah.
And they will be allowed and asked to do 2 or 3 times the production for the same number of hours worked and therefore the same comp.
Yeah.
But the best of the best survive. The best of the best thrive. The industry moves on. We will need some human element to make sure we're properly managing the machines.
Yep.
And if you're a high earner, or if you're someone who has a high ceiling and lots of gas in the tank, you're probably sitting in a very good position, especially if you're willing to be an early adopter and a fast follower when it comes to the technology. But I was just curious, because you're working for a company that's basically choosing to come onto the scene.
Yes.
During a time when some people are like, do I need to consolidate? Do I need to go bigger?
Yes.
And you're like, no, we're not afraid. Like, no, don't get me wrong. Watermark's been around, but on the retail side.
Right.
Now you're going all in correspondent and TPO. So it's going to be fun to watch what you all do. And I hope as you roll out certain technologies, you share them with me so I can share them with our members.
I look at it like, I'm pretty sure it was 2015, but we can fact check the year. But it was Super Bowl that year. And it was about third quarter. We were all watching the game. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but that was the very first time that the commercial hit for Rocket Mortgage to do basically a pre-qual on somebody's front lawn. And the commercial was...
Click button, get mortgage?
Yes. Basically, person with their phone, and they're looking at the house. They love it. They click a few buttons, and suddenly they have a pre-approval in their hand. That particular Sunday night, I texted my sales manager at the time and said, we're meeting first thing tomorrow morning. And that following morning, he and I basically said, the world just changed last night. Whether everybody else realizes it or not, borrowers now expect that they're going to get a mortgage on their phone. Our immediate focus from this moment forward has to be to figure out how does our process match that expectation. And while it's taken a long time
10
since
years.
that moment, right, to really get to a place where we truly are there, the mindset shifted and borrower experience and their expectations shifted in that moment because one of the largest mortgage companies said this is how they could get it done. And everybody else had to match up. And so I see that moment happening now. The faster everybody moves to an AI experience and starts promoting that they're using AI in their experience, it's going to cause everybody else down the line to have to shift their experience as well. How long will it take us to get there? Who knows? But the idea is you better be prepared for the change because we all know we can get a mortgage on our phone now.
Yep. So I had lunch with Laura Kay today and we were walking back. So I'm going to share with you what off the record, not Laura Kay Shealy, but this is Laura Kay Shalamis, like Nostradamus, like Shalamis, however you can butcher those two together. The prognosticator.
Yes.
Okay, her alter ego.
Yes.
She told me 10 years.
Yep.
She told me 10 years. She said, it's going to take these pale, male, and stales. My words, not hers on that one. I pride myself. I'm like, look, my industry is pale, male, and stale. I can't do anything about that. I'm pale and male. I can't do anything about that. Well, I guess one thing I can. Both things I can. I don't want to be orange, and I really like the sex I was born, so I'm not looking to change it. So I can at least change not being stale.
Yes.
So I'm pale and male, but our industry's pale, male, and stale. Nonetheless, Laura Kay was saying, look, the old guard, it's going to take them a while. It's going to take them a while, which is good because, like, I'm 45 years old. I want to go hard for 10 more years.
Yep.
And I like knowing if your prognostication is somewhat accurate, I should be good to go for the next 10 years. But I do know that what I'm doing with all of my businesses is we're going all in on AI. All right, finally, let's wrap up on this. Let's talk about your book.
Okay.
This is super exciting, and FOMO's kicked in. I'm hella jealous. I have a book I want to be writing. It was supposed to have been written by September of last year. So you can see where that one sits.
You got this. Just dive in.
Well, you shared with me your secrets, and I think I'm going to try to figure out that.
Okay.
I need to get my wife to buy in on that 4-day retreat thing, though. But let's talk about your book. What's the title again?
The 52 Mindset.
And why'd you pick 52?
Because we got 52 weeks in the year, and I always say, look out with what I can do with them.
All right. And where can people find the book?
Amazon and Audible.
Okay. So go to Amazon.com. Who's reading the Audible? Are you reading it?
Yes, it's me.
It's you?
Yes.
How long did that take?
So it took me about 3 days to record it in studio. And I will just tell you this. If you write a book simply for the purpose of being to someday able to record an Audible, do it for that reason, because it's a legacy that your family will have forever. Your voice reading your story.
I love that. You know, the one thing I've thought about with what we do on this podcast is, and I'm getting ready to tell the story of the podcast in Las Vegas for everyone at Mastermind Summit. And it's like my first time actually getting into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to tie it into these top 10 business lessons that it taught. But this was never on my list of reasons to launch a podcast. But there came a time when I recognized I probably had hit 100 or 200 episodes by then. I'm like, oh my gosh, if something terrible were to happen to me.
Yes.
My kids and their kids, if they have them one day,
yes, will
at least be able to see granddaddy on the YouTube.
Right.
At a minimum, they can at least see what I look like at that point in my life. They can hear my voice and hear what was important to me at that time.
Right.
So not why I did it. And I love what you just said about if you're ever going to write a book, make sure you do the Audible at a minimum so that someone has your voice preserved and they can go back and listen to you read your words that you wrote, your thoughts and your ideas.
Yeah. Well, and that's ultimately the 52 Mindset is my story. It's the story of how I came from being a successful, super busy loan originator, salesperson, taking in everybody's ideas, like I said earlier, listening to the tapes, going to the conferences, pulling in all the things that was making everyone else successful. And it was making my daily to-do list really long and really overwhelming. And what I came to realize was if I could just sit down and do one thing a week, one really big rock to move, that over a year I could significantly transform my business, but I needed to be focused in that way. And so originally I wrote a white paper, just a list of what could I do, 52 things to grow my business, different ways to make connections. And I started practicing that. And what you're going to find in the book is it's not so much about, it does increase your sales. It does increase the ability for you to produce whatever widget you want more of. But really what it's about is making genuine connection throughout your life and continually expanding those connections. So each week going into the goal of saying, if I could just meet 5 more people or let 5 more people know what my business is or how I could help them, how will that evolve over a year? And so the book talks about those 52 things, but also talks about success stories of other really top producing people in all industries and what they do in order to have a weekly mindset. And then also just what do you have to do to take care of yourself and your own mindset to stay motivated to come back week to week?
How personal do you get in the book?
Pretty personal.
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is really important in my story is to understand that I didn't do this well at first. In fact, there's probably a block full of people, who knows, maybe longer, that could line up and say, she really wasn't that great to work with, or processors that said that I didn't organize files well, or executives that said I pushed too hard on things. And so I like to put that out front, because it's in those experiences that I ultimately learned the way to do it better and the way to lead others better. It's what drove me to really study leadership at a deeper level, is understanding what those interactions meant for me and how at times I was successful while also not being the best in other ways. And so over a year, I made that commitment of how can I change how I'm leading others, how I'm interacting with others gradually. The same way I said I'm going to increase sales, I wanted to also be a better leader to others.
Was it pretty cathartic writing the book?
It was. It was really interesting. You mentioned the book retreat. So it was a bit of a challenge in 2020. All of us had, right? It was like, we're sitting around, what are we doing with our time? I'd always had the idea in my mind that I wanted to write a book. One of the things that motivates me, of course, is if somebody ever told me I couldn't do something, well, then that's going to become the number one thing I'm going to do. So I had that in the back of my mind that, could I do this? And so I went off on a book retreat, and that means 4 days, me in an inn somewhere in New Hampshire, and my laptop, and I just saw what I could do with it. And I cranked out the first 26 chapters, came home, had a pretty good start. And so then I just spent a few hours every morning. I would wake up early before my regular day started writing, and got the book done by the end of October. So it took me about 60 days in total. But I find that once I'm on fire for writing, it really cranks out, and the stories come to me, meaning like this last book that I've been working on, it's a lot of stories from other people, and the way that those people have just come to me, whether it be through the universe or whatever.
What's this book going to be called?
The next book is The Career Quake.
Okay.
Which is the idea that we all go through unexpected career transition, either by choice or not by our choice, and how that journey of going through that change really has a similar process, meaning first, we have to identify that we're not alone in it. Second, we have to understand that we go through a process of unraveling and grief and kind of disconnecting from the old identity and taking on the new before we're really ready to go back into our next job or our next career path. And so it's stories of everybody that has come across that quake in their life. And some of them are really big on the Richter scale. Some of them are really small. But it's a significant change that ultimately alters their path.
Did you do the same thing for this book? Did you go away and do like a writer's retreat?
I did. I was going through a transition myself career-wise, and so I deliberately decided to kind of take a break and unwind, and went off and started writing. My husband and I have an agreement. He knows that if I'm in writer mode, I can't be with anyone else. Yeah. I just have a natural instinct to take care of others, whether it be, hey, what are we going to have for dinner tonight, or what should we do today? And so if I'm going to go write, I need to do it by myself.
Yeah, and you and your husband have another agreement that for every time you go away for a writer's retreat, you then have to get on the Polaris side by side with him.
That's right.
And you all go mudding.
That's right.
Yeah, Laura Kay shared with me and said, hey, what do you like to do outside of work? She goes, oh, get muddy.
Yes.
I'm like get muddy, like hiking? She's like, no, get on the Polaris. It's a side by side. We find the dirtiest, tallest rock or mountain, and y'all just haul ass.
Off-road.
Go off-road.
Yes. That's another real specialty of ours is, as much as I like to get creative and travel all around the country meeting people and doing these things, when we unplug, we really unplug. We like to go to places that there's no cell phone coverage, that we can just, ride around and get dirty.
Yeah, because you're a published author, best-selling author according to Amazon, but you're also like a keynote speaker. So you are for hire or for booking.
Yes.
Right. You're open to go to trade organizations or mortgage companies and share your stories and your knowledge and invest in the participants.
Absolutely.
If people want to get a hold of you, how would they get a hold of you?
You can go over to the52academy.com or Laura Kay at 52academy.com to book me for those types of events.
Are you a LinkedIn person?
I am a LinkedIn person. You can find me there too.
Okay. That's LinkedIn tends to be like my go-to. Mm-hmm. I kept Facebook when I started podcasting and kind of getting this like national following. My wife had asked me, hey, can you keep something for us?
Yeah.
So I keep Facebook for her and the kids.
Right.
Which is why I apologize when people try to connect me on Facebook. I don't accept them unless I would accept you because I consider you a friend in the industry, right? Like we're friends now.
Right.
But like if we haven't had a chance to become friends yet, then I don't.
Yes.
But I'm like, look, Instagram and LinkedIn are amazing ways. And like you, I'm like, look, anything you need is on tloponline.com.
Right.
Like just go there. And if you can't find me or figure out what I'm doing
Right.
next, like I'm doing a piss poor job. So for you, it's 52 Academy, 52.
5'2".
52academy.com.
Yep.
Or your, obviously your Laura K. Shealy on LinkedIn.
Yep.
But then you said you have another, is it a web page?
Yeah, you can email me at
Oh.
laurak@52academy.com for
Oh,
booking.
beautiful. We didn't talk about 52 Academy.
Yeah.
Why didn't we go there?
Well, we certainly can.
Well,
but-
what? Just real quick. We have to find a way to put a bow on this. At some point, people are like,
Okay.
hey, you've talked too long. I got to get to work. But what is 52 Academy?
52 Academy is a way for people to plug in and learn more about the 52 mindset and understanding what are those weekly strategies that you can put into your business to really move it forward, whether it's individual coaching, consulting, whether you're an individual or a company, you can reach out and we'll talk about that.
I think 52 Academy and TLOP, Originator Coaching, should collab.
I love that idea.
Yes. Could you imagine like us going on the road together?
Ooh.
Like doing like 3-day workshops or retreats? What we could do for sales, we could do it for the real estate professionals, for the executives. We could bring in Dr. Stacy to do leadership.
I love it.
There is so much we could do together. Like I'm putting that out in the universe today. 52 Academy and TLOP Originator Coaching and Mortgage Advisory Services is going to be collabing
Yeah.
from 2026 and beyond with 52 Academy.
Look out with what we're going to do with the next 52 weeks.
Hey,
It could be amazing.
Yes. Look out Mel Robbins too, huh?
Huh?
You put some glasses on you and you're like younger, you're younger Mel.
Oh my gosh. You know how many times I hear that from my girlfriends? Because I actually have the square black glasses, but I am fighting wearing glasses full time, even though my eyesight is getting terrible. But hey, it could be a thing. Maybe you've motivated me today.
Okay. Well, you know what? All we have to do is get the let them tattooed on your wrist.
Oh yeah.
Then you'll be there.
Okay.
I love me some Mel Robbins, by the way. I haven't met her yet, but one day Mel and I are going to hang out. Maybe we'll invite you to come with us.
That sounds good.
Awesome. Y'all, if you are not following Laura K yet online, make sure you do it. Check out her book on Amazon. Go to her website. Go to LinkedIn and follow her. She's Laura K. Shealy. I'm Dustin Owen. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for you today, but we do look forward to catching you on the next episode. Peace.